Imagine this. You are walking down a quiet street at dusk, and for the first time in a long while, there is no music in your ears, no notifications buzzing in your pocket, no friend beside you to fill the silence. It's just you and the fading light. A soft breeze moves through the trees, carrying the scent of something familiar, perhaps the way autumn smelled when you were a child. And then the thought arrives, uninvited, unshakable. One day this will all disappear. Not just the street, not just the leaves that tremble in the wind, not just the world as you know it, but you. You will cease. Everything you've ever felt, dreamed, feared, and loved will collapse into nothing. The street will continue without you. The world will forget. And even your own memories, your entire inner universe, will vanish as if they had never existed. Your heart clenches. For a second, it's as if time itself stops, leaving only this unbearable weight pressing down on your chest. You shake your head, shove your hands into your pockets, and walk faster, pushing the thought away. And just like that, life resumes. But has it really? You go home. You distract yourself. You scroll, you binge watch, you make plans for the future as if the future is a promise. Yet deep inside, that thought still lingers, silent but potent. What do I do with this reality? How am I supposed to live, knowing that every step I take is leading me to an abyss? Now, consider this. What if that fear, the one you try so hard to ignore, isn't just some occasional existential crisis? What if it's the silent architect of your entire life? What if the fear of death is behind every choice you've ever made? Think about it. The career you chase, the relationships you hold on to, the risks you refuse to take, the way you fill your days with noise, movement, ambition. What if it all comes back to one desperate attempt to outrun the inevitable? You tell yourself you're striving for success, for love, for meaning. But what if you're just bargaining with time? What if every dream is, at its core, an unconscious plea? Let me matter. Let me leave something behind. Let me not disappear. And if that's true, are you really free? Or are you just a puppet, dancing on invisible strings pulled by something far older, far deeper than you can perceive? And if that's the case, then the real question isn't how do I live well, but rather, how do I escape? Because if death has already shaped your every decision, your identity, your sense of self, then whose life are you really living? But before you can even begin to answer that, we must first confront an even more unsettling truth. Why do we fear death at all? And what if the greatest force controlling your life is a lie? It is easy to assume that our fear of death is natural, a biological survival mechanism, hardwired into us like hunger or pain. But that explanation is too simple. If it were merely about survival, then animals too should be tormented by the same existential dread. Yet they aren't. A gazelle does not weep for its inevitable demise. A wolf does not sit beneath the moon, paralyzed by thoughts of its own mortality. The only creatures known to suffer the burden of knowing they will die are us. But why? The philosopher Martin Heidegger once wrote that human beings are unique because we are the only species that lives with an awareness of death. It is not just something that happens to others, it is something that, inescapably, will happen to us. This awareness creates a paradox. On one hand, we are creatures of instinct, designed to avoid harm, to seek comfort, to survive. On the other, we are creatures of intellect, cursed with the knowledge that no matter how fiercely we fight, we will ultimately lose. This contradiction is unbearable. So, what do? We deny. Not consciously, of course. Consciously, we talk about death in abstract terms. We intellectualize it. We make jokes about it. We read about it, maybe even accept it in theory. But deep down, we do everything in our power to live as if we are eternal. Think about it. The entire structure of civilization, every monument, Every religion, every law, is built upon the silent terror of oblivion. History itself is a graveyard of people who refuse to be forgotten. Nietzsche called this the human need for eternal recurrence, the desire to make our existence feel infinite, to create things that will outlast us. It is why we carve names into stone, why we write books, why we build legacies. It is why we chase achievements, as if trophies and titles will shield us from the void. It is why we obsess over youth, inventing creams, surgeries, and entire industries designed to make us feel untouched by time. Why we worship fame, as if being known could make us immune to being gone. Even religion, as profound and meaningful as it is, can be seen through this lens. The promise of an afterlife is, at its core, a refusal to accept that death is the end. And yet, Jean-Paul Sartre argued that this very refusal creates a deep existential contradiction. The more we fight against death, the more enslaved we become to the things that promise to protect us from it. You don't just want a good job, you want a legacy. You don't just want love, you want someone to remember you when you're gone. You don't just want to live, you want your life to have meaning. And this is where the real problem lies. If you strip everything down, every ambition, every desire, every fear, you will see it. Your life is not built on the pursuit of happiness. It is built on the avoidance of death. But avoidance is not freedom. It is a prison. And here's the most terrifying part. The harder you try to escape death, the more it controls you. Think of a person who refuses to take risks, staying in the safest possible routine because they are afraid of wasting their life. Are they living or merely not dying? Think of a man who works endlessly, piling up wealth in the hope of securing his future. But by the time he has secured it, he has no future left. Think of an artist who spends years obsessing over creating something immortal, but in doing so, forgets to actually live. This is the paradox of death denial. In trying so hard to defeat death, we end up being ruled by it. But what if there is another way? What if the problem is not death itself, but our fear of it? Because if that fear is the root of our suffering, then escaping it might be the only true path to freedom. But before we can talk about breaking free, we need to confront something even more unsettling. What if this fear is not just personal, but something far greater? What if it has shaped entire societies, not just your decisions, but the world itself? And what if the consequences of this hidden force are far more dangerous than you ever imagined? You wake up one morning and everything feels off. You don't know why, but something is gnawing at you. Maybe it's the way the clock on your wall keeps ticking, a sound you've never noticed before. Maybe it's the way the sunlight looks different, less permanent, more fleeting. And then you remember the thought that crept into your mind last night before you fell asleep. One day I won't wake up. You shake it off, get dressed, step out into the world, and tell yourself, it doesn't matter. But what if it does? What if this, the shadow of mortality, doesn't just shape your life, but the entire fabric of civilization? Because here is a truth that is rarely spoken. Everything you see, every law, every system, every cultural norm is the result of human beings desperately trying to outmaneuver death. Look at history. Why have emperors built colossal tombs? Why have kings waged wars in their names? Why have entire societies been built around the preservation of names, bloodlines, and power? Because deep down, power is a defense against irrelevance. If you can conquer nations, if you can etch your name into history books, if you can make the world say your name long after you're gone, then maybe, just maybe, you won't truly die. And this isn't just about kings and emperors. Look at today. Why do billionaires obsess over longevity research, pouring billions into life extension technology? Why does Silicon Valley dream of uploading consciousness into machines? Why do we track our steps, our sleep, our calorie intake, measuring our bodies as if we can engineer them into eternity? Because modern society is just an evolved version of an ancient fear. But here's the problem. The more we fight death, the more we create suffering. Look at our obsession with productivity. The idea that every second must be optimized, monetized, turned into something useful. Why? Because time is running out. And if time is running out, then wasting it is a kind of death. Look at our obsession with youth. The fear of aging, of losing relevance, of being forgotten. Why do we hide wrinkles, erase gray hairs, pretend that aging is something unnatural? Because we see aging as a slow march toward disappearance. Look at the way we treat love, the way we crave soulmates, as if finding the right person will grant us a kind of immortality. Grow old with me, we say. But what we really mean is, don't let me face the end alone. And look at how entire industries profit from this fear. The anti-aging market is worth billions, selling the illusion of youth as if it were a cure for mortality. The self-help industry thrives by whispering, you can be more, you can be remembered, you can matter. The entertainment industry feeds us stories of heroes who defy time, who leave legacies, who achieve greatness. But the cruelest trick? The more we try to conquer death, the more trapped we become. In our attempt to escape impermanence, we become slaves to the things that promise to save us from it. We work ourselves into exhaustion, chasing careers that will make us somebody. We stay in toxic relationships, fearing loneliness more than suffering. We drown ourselves in distractions, scrolling endlessly, consuming endlessly, because the silence reminds us of the one thing we cannot escape. And yet, what if everything we fear is an illusion? What if our terror of death isn't about death at all? Because here's the deepest irony. We fear dying because we think it will rob us of something. We think it will take our existence. But the truth is, we never really had it to begin with. We are like waves in the ocean, convinced we are separate from the sea. We fight to exist, to matter, to endure. But the moment we stop fighting, we realize we were always part of something greater. But how do we break free? How do we stop letting death control us? The answer is not what you think. It's not about fighting death. It's not about escaping it. It's about something far more radical. It's about embracing it. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. Imagine, for a moment, that you are already dead. Not in a tragic way, not in a painful way, just gone. The world moves on without you. The sun rises, people wake up, the streets hum with life. Someone else drinks coffee from the cup that once belonged to you. Someone else takes the job you worried about, loves the people you cherished, tells stories that have nothing to do with you. And what's most unsettling? Everything is fine. The world does not collapse in your absence. Life does not pause to acknowledge your departure. And if you sit with that thought, if you really let it sink in, you might feel something strange. Not terror, not sorrow, but relief. Because the truth is, you were never in control to begin with. Every moment you spent trying to outrun death, chasing legacy, love, validation, security, was built on an illusion. You never had control over time. You never had control over memory. You never even had control over yourself. And once you accept this, something incredible happens. You become free. Because if death is no longer your enemy, then what is there to fear? If you are already dead in the sense that your future disappearance is inevitable, then why hesitate? Why delay telling the truth? You are running out of time. Why live for someone else's expectations? They will die too. Why worship security, comfort, the illusion of permanence? Nothing is permanent. For the first time, you understand what the Stoics meant when they practiced memento mori, the daily contemplation of death. They didn't dwell on death to be morbid. They did it because once you accept death fully, it loses its power over you. Take Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor. He ruled the greatest empire of his time, yet every night he reminded himself that he was just a speck in the vastness of history. Soon you will be ashes or mere bones. a name at most, and that is all. Take the Zen monks who meditate in graveyards, letting the reality of impermanence strip them of ego, of desire, of the need for control. Take Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, who attained enlightenment not by clinging to life, but by accepting its impermanence with open hands. The greatest figures in history did not run from death. They befriended it. And this is the rebellion. This is how you break free. You stop seeing death as something to be feared and start seeing it as the very thing that makes life meaningful. Think about it. If you were immortal, would you appreciate anything? Would you cherish a sunrise, knowing an infinite number of sunrises awaited you? Would you hold someone close, knowing you had forever? Number. You would grow numb. Life would lose its urgency, its beauty. But because death exists, every second matters. The sunset is beautiful because it will never happen in exactly the same way again. The love you give is precious because one day it will no longer be yours to give. The time you have is priceless because it is slipping away as you read this sentence. And the final, most radical truth? You are already dying. Not in the distant future, not as an abstract concept. Right now. Every breath, every passing second is another step toward the end. And that is not something to mourn. That is something to honor. Because once you stop resisting, once you stop seeing death as an intruder, you will realize you were never meant to live forever. You were meant to live now. And once you embrace that fully, once you truly let go, you will finally be free. But that leads us to the final, most powerful realization of all. Because if you are free from death, then what does it really mean to be alive? Take a deep breath. Feel the air fill your lungs, the pulse of life moving through you. This moment, right here, right now, is all that has ever truly existed for you. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, just this. And yet, for most of your life, you have lived elsewhere. You have lived in the past, replaying memories like a fragile attempt to preserve what has already faded. You have lived in the future, chasing goals, security, meaning, believing that if you just achieve enough, love enough, become enough, you will somehow outmaneuver the inevitable. But now, you see the truth. You were never fighting death. You were fighting yourself. The version of you that wanted control, that wanted guarantees, that wanted life to be something it has never been. Permanent, predictable, fair. But life is not fair. It is not predictable. And it is certainly not permanent. And that is why it matters. You do not get to know how many mornings you have left. You do not get to know which hug will be the last. You do not get to know when the people you love will disappear. But you do get to be here, and here is enough. For centuries, philosophers and mystics have tried to answer the same impossible question. What does it mean to live well? And the answer has always been the same. Not success, not legacy, not avoidance of suffering, not the illusion of control, but presence. Because death is not the enemy. The enemy is not living while you are alive. The enemy is spending your days so afraid of the end that you never truly begin. So what now? Now, you wake up and live as if this is all you have. Not in recklessness, not in despair, but in the simple, sacred truth that every moment is already enough. You let go of the need to be remembered and instead focus on being real. You stop obsessing over what you leave behind and instead give everything to what is in front of you. You love fully, knowing love is fleeting. You speak honestly, knowing time is short. You take risks, knowing safety is an illusion. And when death does come, because it will, you will not meet it with fear. You will meet it with open hands, because it was never something to fight. It was always a part of you. And for the first time in your life, you will understand. You were never meant to last. You were meant to burn, bright, fierce, unafraid, and then, when the time comes, to let go. Because life was never about winning against death. It was about showing up before it arrived.